Right, g'day everyone. Welcome back to the Shortball podcast, where today we've got a very special guest, long-time media personality in Andy Raymond. Andy, how you going?
Good, legend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm going all right. Yeah, the boxing, covering the boxing the other day with Sonny Bill Williams getting that win over Barry Hall. Did you see that coming at all?
I didn't see it coming in that fashion. If Sonny was going to win, I thought it'd be 5 or 6 rounds in. I didn't think either of them actually had an early knockout in them, but Sonny caught him so crisply, and the first one was a short punch. I think Sonny was the only one that knew that he got him. And once your resistance goes, you don't see the other punches coming, and that's sort of what happened with poor old Barry, who's a big, tough unit, and to be able to stop someone and something like that as quickly as Sonny did, absolutely awesome.
Oh, it's massive. It was a mad punch, mad combo as well.
Yeah.
But I don't get too much into the boxing, but I like to watch the odd footy matches, and I watched the Tim Tszyu fight the other day as well. How have you enjoyed covering the boxing and getting right into that?
Yeah, loved it. I used to train with a guy called Trevor King, who was a neighbour of ours, a former Australian champion, and we trained down at North Parramatta at the bottom of North Rocks Road. And the Parramatta Eels used to go in there once every fortnight for a boxing session. So, and I was probably only 10 or 11. So my two loves are boxing and my mighty Parramatta Eels and the Rugby League. And at 11 years age, I sort of got to see it all, up close, and learnt really, really quickly with boxing that you don't have to be the biggest, baddest guy to win. And got a huge amount of respect for anyone that's got the nuts to jump into a boxing ring. I love it. I really do. And I have over the whole journey. Some fights are better than others. Some nights are better than others. Well, mate, it is the ultimate test of character. Can't look around for help if you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
You've got to keep your hands up and keep dodging them.
Yeah, I'd have to put it up personally with one of the toughest sports that you could go into. It's like that in UFC, like mixed martial arts and that, because I've done a little bit of mixed martial arts training myself. I wouldn't stand in front of any of these blokes at all, like if they were across the ring. But what do you think of boxing in Australia in particular? What are you making of it? We're sort of rising back up after a little bit of a lull. There's sort of not much interest. What are your thoughts on the rise in boxing in Australia?
It does that. It rises and it falls, and it rises and it falls. Boxing's a really fickle one, unlike UFC or MMA. In the MMA, you can be the best in the world, but have 6 losses on your resume because you fought the best. In boxing, if you have 2 or 3 losses, that's about the end of you, sadly, because they pick their fights, and the best don't fight the best. And we saw that with Jeff Horn on top of the world. He beat Manny Pacquiao, the living legend. Yeah. 2 fights later, he was done. So it's a fickle sport. We're a fickle audience. I hope that doesn't happen to Tim at some stage. It will happen to Tim. Let's hope it's not for another 10 or so years. Watch him, climb the top of the mountain and keep on climbing like his great father did. But yeah, and there's a lot of good boxers away, probably 18, 24 months away from launching themselves onto the world stage around Australia. There's probably another 6 of them there that are something pretty special.
Yeah. Well, you got like George Kambosos. So all respect to the bloke. I hadn't known who he was until he went for that big fight. It was a bloke he versed. His name,
Fimo Lopez.
Yeah. I hadn't heard of him until that fight, and then all of a sudden he just exploded onto the world stage. And then you got obviously Tim Tszyu has been followed by a long time, and then you've got like the Harry Garside as well. Yep. After his Olympics run, he's going massive. But do you think that the peaking in interest in boxing around this time is more to do with all those guys coming through that are showing how good they really are, or does it have a little bit to do as well with the footy fights that have sort of started to come through? And
Yeah, look, there's a bit of both. There's a good crop coming through. The football guys, the boxing purists hate it, but they get eyes on the sport that otherwise wouldn't be watching the sport. I mean, as you said, George Kambosos is now the lightweight champion of the world. A year ago, most people didn't know who George was, which is sad because he was, one of Australia's best for a number of years. So it's a combination of a whole lot of things. I think you're going to see a further surge in boxing over the next 12 months, next 2 years, as the next generation come through. And there is some really good ones too, and really exciting fighters. Tim's an exciting fighter. His younger brother Nikita's exciting. Like they're good to watch. Often it ends early, but they're good to watch. So I see nothing but positivity for boxing in Australia moving forward.
Yeah, it's been great. I never used to. I watched a little bit around the Anthony Mundine, Danny Green sort of era, but then I sort of went off it a little bit. I've really enjoyed some of the fights recently, like the footy fight nights during the off season, and the Tim Zoo. I've watched nearly all of his fights in the last 2-3 years. So it's been really good. I think it's really good that boxing's starting to sort of make a comeback in Australia.
Yep, I certainly agree.
Yeah,
because when it's good, it's really good.
Yeah, it's really good to watch. Now, as an Eels fan yourself, I know you would have watched the game on the weekend. How bloody good was that, eh?
Yeah, brilliant. Loved it. What a couple of weeks we've had of footy. It's been enormous. I mean, on the same day that was the Titans Raiders, where it was 22 unanswered points one way, 24 the other, then the Eels and the Storm. Seeing some amazing footy. I love the para game and the theatre that went with it, and the great Ray Stone doing his thing. Unfortunately, suffering that injury as a result. But any win over Melbourne's a good win, right?
Oh, I've been loving it. Each time we come up against them, I just want to chirp me mates who I've got a couple of mates who are Storm supporters. I just chirp them every time how we've got the wood over them and all that sort of stuff. It's got to end at one point with how class the Storm are, but loving it at the moment. Yeah, in terms of the footy over the early starts of the season, last year there was a lot of problems with all the blowout scores and stuff like that. But this year the average scores I think were the lowest. The average margins, were the lowest since like 2010. What do you sort of put that down to, and what's your take on the much closer and entertaining games?
I think a little bit of that has got to do with the new ruling of penalty inside 40 and not restarting the set, and a team ends up, holding the ball for 10 or 11 tackles, and you are going to end up on the try line if you're the dominant side. So I think that's got something to do with it. I also think there will be the blowouts. I think we're already starting to see, the good and the bad systems, the good and the bad teams. But whilst it's like this, I'm just going to cherish it. Last year, look, there was a lot of good footy play, but geez, there was a lot of average games. I mean, I'll still watch them and I'll still love them. I love the games that suck. I don't care. But there was some pretty average viewing, average entertainment last year. So yeah, that change in the rules. I've got to say, I do think the salary cap is slowly working. I think you're going to see more of that next year, with the addition of Redcliffe and the spread of talent. I think that's going to be really interesting and a real evener. You just can't keep everyone. The good sides can't keep everyone, and that's the price for success that the really good sides, must pay.
Well, that was a key thing last year. Like you look at the Bulldogs squad last year. I use that as the example. No offense to any of the blokes in there, but it was pretty pathetic compared to like your Melbourne Storms, your Sydney Roosters, and all that sort of thing. And there was just such a large gap in just pure talent across the board, and the good systems another thing that is really telling is the good systems are able to figure out the rule changes and figure out how to use them best to their ability. So it's like you saw the Roosters and the Storm, they would shoot out of their line on first or second to cause that offside 6 again, just to make sure that they could win the tackle, and that would allow them to dominate the rest of the set. Whereas other teams, they weren't quite doing that because they were just sort of playing footy as they saw it, and they didn't have those systems in place. So you saw a massive gap in talent there in particular.
Yeah, and mate, you're right with the coaches too. The good coaches and the ones that are willing to take a bit of a gamble, they see the rule changes more as a challenge and a way to evolve as opposed to something that's going to hinder the side. And it's amazing how it works, and it has done for a number of years now. Trent Robinson and Craig Bellamy and Ricky Stewart are the three guys that normally find the advantage in a new rule before anyone else. And it only takes 3 or 4 weeks after that, and the rest catch up. They're all wonderful coaches. They're all wonderful assistant coaches, but those three guys in particular, they just see things perhaps a little earlier and a little clearer than most. They've been around a long time.
Well, I saw the Rugby League guru. He made a pretty interesting point is when Craig Bellamy retires from coaching, he needs to go into some sort of role there for the NRL, just so he can sort of outsmart the coaches in terms of placing rules. I think that'd be brilliant for the game, to be honest, because he knows how the game works better than most, in my opinion. I think he's probably the greatest coach of all time, and having a guy like that would, probably help the NRL when they're coming up with so many rule changes lately.
I don't know if the NRL would have the coin to be able to appeal to Craig Bellamy, be coming off 1.2 million a year for the last 10 years, and the NRL would be offering him nowhere near that. He might just enjoy retirement, I'd reckon.
Yeah, I can't see it personally happen, but it's a good idea to throw up into the air every once in a while.
Exactly right.
Now I'll go over to the media side of things. You started your own podcast in the back end of 2020. What was the inspiration behind starting that up, especially after 15, 20 plus years of covering sports with Fox and all that?
The idea of a podcast was appealing for a while before I left Fox Sports, or before they left me, however you want to term it. Yeah. And it didn't eventuate because I would end up interstate, away from home 3-4 nights of the week. You get home, you try and have a day or two, relax, and then you're back into it again. So there literally wasn't the time. So now there was the time, and I've absolutely loved it. And I did a podcast interview recently, and he couldn't understand why I enjoyed the podcasting so much. And I explained it like this, that for 20 years, I worked under a producer and an executive producer, and with a director and a cameraman and a whole range of very talented guys. But as a result of being just a minor part of a wider broadcast, I had time limitations of how long I could go, what I couldn't say, where I needed to go, what I needed to show. I had all these unofficial rules and things that I had to get into my spot. Well, podcasting, as you would have found out, there's no rules. If I want to do 1,000 podcasts this week, damn it, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 1,000 of them. Or if I want to do one for the next month, well, bugger it, I'll just do one. If I want to swear, I'll swear. If I want to give it to the Panthers, I can give it to the Panthers. Yeah. There's no rules. And as a result, I termed the podcast Andy Raymond Unfiltered. Now, unfiltered doesn't mean I, just swear my head off and go nuts. It just means that I've got no restraints. I've got no rules, no boundaries. It is what it is. And each of my podcasts, very different to the other. And I'm really, really enjoying it. The mates network that I've built up over 30 odd years in the business has been fabulous to me. Everyone that I have asked has said yes. And welcomed the interview with open arms. And I'm really lucky in the fact that these legends of the game, they feel comfortable around me. They trust me. And as a result, the interviews, go further and take a different road to many of the interviews they've done before, because they know they can say things to me and trust me.
Yeah, well, that's Ariel Hawani's a guy that I listen to in the MMA circles. He's even said like he's experienced with ESPN. He said it was really limiting, and people would come on to do interviews or maybe they'd even say no to coming on to do interviews because it was too sort of monotonous. It was the same thing, asking the same questions, getting the same responses over and over again. And in podcasting, you're obviously able to explore your own possible avenues, ask your own questions, be completely free in what you want to say. And I guess must have found it really, really liberating for you to come out from that mainstream. And
it was, and I'm still. I did 64 odd interviews over the off season to get a real big start on the season, and I'm still editing them. And I've just edited up one, and I've got it right here. The topics are your debut game, talking about your halves, talking about your back row partnership, who was your idol, and the fifth one was tell us about your teammates, who's the quiet one, who's the loud one, who's the ADHD, who's the annoying one.
Yeah.
It can go anywhere. I do tactical chats with some guys. With other guys, I'll ask them, which 8 people they'd invite to a barbecue on a Sunday and why. And some of them have been outrageous. I think Greg Bird said he'd take Adolf Hitler along. So I got no idea what Birdie's thinking there. But it's liberating. You can do your own thing. You can vary it up as much as you want. But as Ariel said, under the structure of a corporate company, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it can, in hindsight, become, just more of the same. When you're actually at the ground and you're interviewing players either before the game, halftime, or after the game, if we're being honest, there's probably only 15 different questions that you can ask them that are appropriate.
Yeah.
But there's 100 different ways to ask each of those questions. But after a while, those 15 questions, even to the viewers, they get boring. So I'm allowed to explore as far as I want to explore with the podcast, and I'm loving that side of it.
Yeah, well, that's another thing I was going to ask. How do you sort of structure your interviews, and like, what do you think when you go, okay, say this week I'm having Mitchell Moses on, what do I want to get out of him? What do I want to know? And how do I want to create the most engaging product for the audience?
Yeah, what I would normally do is I always do a refresher on someone, even if I know them. And if I'm calling a game, and I'm calling games every week with Triple M this year, I know every guy by sight and I know his story, but I still do a refresher each week, and I go back online and I refresh myself what they've done, where they've been, what issues they've had. And I do that with the Legends series interviews with the guys that are retired. And I formulate, I guess, a dozen, just points, and then start filling in the dots between there. But not all of my interviews, very few of my interviews have gone the direction I thought. I've got one in a couple of weeks with an absolute legend of the game, Max Krilich. And I'd formulated the majority of the interview was based around him being the captain of the 1982 Invincibles, the Kangaroo Tour. It's well before your time, Jacob, but it's probably, mate, it is probably the greatest assembly of footballers ever to tour Great Britain, the 1982 lineup, and Maxi Krilich was the captain. So much of it was going to be around the 82 Kangaroo Tour. His first response, he spoke about being called into the forces in 1969 and told he was going to Vietnam and his father was a communist and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, whoa, holy, where did this come from? So even in the first answer, anything that I sort of had planned was tossed on its head. And I went with him. I learnt the art, and it is interviewing's an art. And we were speaking before this. Then you're still learning the art of the interviewing, but interviewing is an art, and there is so many guys that will ask a guest onto their television show or their radio show or their podcast, and they want to be the star of the interview. I learnt the art of an interview is to make them the star and allow them to tell their story wherever that may go, however that may be. You've invited them on for whatever reason. Let them talk and encourage them to talk and engage with them. And that's what I do with the Legends series ones. And I allow the guest to drive the interview, basically. If he needs me to steer him back on course, and that happens with footballers from time to time, I will help steer him back on course without giving him up completely. But it is an art getting the best out of your interview.
Yeah, 100%. It has to be. But I just want to know, how did he go from being asked the question in regards to captaining the 82 side to he was going to Vietnam? How did that tangent go off?
The first question I ask in the Legends series is who is? So who is Max Krilich?
Yeah.
And he said, and this isn't a direct quote because I haven't edited it up yet, but I will over the course of the next couple of days. He said, Max Krilich is a young boy from Croatian background. My father was a communist. I'm a very proud Manly Seagull. In fact, in 1969, he said, speaking of my father, I got called in to the forces and told I was going to Vietnam. And Dad, being a communist, said, absolutely no way. You're not going over there. You're not going to fight. And the story actually goes so much further. It's ridiculous. It's the most amazing response I think I've ever had. So that's how it ended up there. And we spoke about his childhood and his childhood with immigrant parents, and the fact that a lot of that Manly side, the famous Manly side of the 1970s, there was a lot of first generation Australians in there, guys like Peter Peters with the Greek background, and all of them still best of mates to this very day. So that's pretty cool. Apologies if I keep looking around. I've got the little Labrador down here, just panting away, looking for a cuddle for Dad.
Gonna have to give him straight attention as soon as you jump off this.
Exactly.
Hang around for too long.
Yeah.
I saw the other day you're very active in commenting on certain social media posts, a lot with the Fox League and all that sort of stuff. One in particular I saw you comment on was about Mitchell Barnett's elbow. I'll get your thoughts on that in a second because I actually want to hear you a little bit more in depth of your thoughts. But firstly, how important is social media in sharing your opinions and getting your platform out in particular?
Yeah, it's important. And look, I'm from a different generation, an older generation from you, and you guys understand it far more than me. I don't. I've only just worked out Instagram story, for God's sake. I had no idea what it was or no idea how to use it. Look, it's important. It can be an absolute battlefield as well. I am all for everyone giving their opinion, and I would never argue with anyone's opinion because it's your opinion. Therefore, you are right. That's your opinion. What I don't like and what I take exception to is, when it crosses that line, and social media, it does. I'm an advocate for, the no bullying. We've seen too many beautiful young kids take their own lives or be affected for a life by online crap. And that as a father of two, that makes me just sad that a generation, at your age, Jacob, you're still at school, that there can be someone that's not having a great day and they get bullied and they see that as the answer. That horrifies me more than anything in the world, to be honest.
Well, there's obviously the pros and the cons of something like this. Like, obviously,
it is.
you're allowed to get your opinion out there, and you can interact with so many new people. But then, obviously, you've got, there's no better word than trolls that just come on there and use it for the wrong reason, and that's something that you try and phase out as much as you can, but it does get tough sometimes. Like, it's. As it sort of goes on, there's more of accumulation. I noticed, like, when you sort of have more of a voice, people will try and try and shoot you down straight away and use that social media for the wrong reason. So it's I personally love getting my opinions out there and being able to speak freely. But obviously, as you said, there's that negative side to it. Now, so you comment on a video of Mitchell Barnett's act. I want to get your thoughts on that, and how many weeks do you think he should get for it as well?
First up, it wasn't me commentating. I've got a young fella that's helping me with my social media, and he commented on it, and I think it lasted about 12 hours before I saw it, and he got an ass kicking. Be that as it may, he learned a lesson, and it was good. He's late teens, enthusiastic, and he learned a life lesson. I didn't go off at him. He wrote the wrong thing. He got personal about Mitch Barnett. That disappointed me. I've just gone through the reasons why, and the positive to come out of it, because I'm a positive guy. I don't dwell on the negatives. I've never picked a wooden spooner in my life because I see that as negative. So the positive to come out of the young bloke commenting on my behalf was we sat down and had a chat about, I didn't think it was acceptable, and here were the reasons why, because it crossed the personal line, and he got it, and I'm positive that he got it, and that makes me happy. But as for the act, terrible act. And Mitch, of all people, would absolutely be hating life at the moment. What does he get tonight at the judiciary? This is going to be one people will argue on. There's been other offences because of loading and the nonsense they had last year that have got 6 weeks that are nowhere near as bad as what Mitch did. But do you go overboard and try and set an example? I think most people are saying 6 to 8 weeks. I think that's the general consensus amongst the media, and the love them or hate them, the media normally pretty on the mark.
Yeah,
I think 6 or 8 weeks is probably right. That said, I think the punishment Mitch should be dealing out himself to himself would be far worse than 6 or 8 weeks on the sideline.
Yeah, I saw it and I sort of thought it's a bit no good. Like, it obviously put the elbow up and struck. I can't remember what the player was in the neck, but my initial thoughts were probably like that 4 to 6 range, because I could be completely wrong on this, but I think Mitchell Barnett doesn't really have much loading, does he? He hasn't been suspended from what I can remember. But
well, they cleaned everyone's slate and redid the judiciary system at the start of the season. So as a result, there's no loading, there's no priors. There's from what I understand, he's just going there fresh. Tonight, Tuesday. Yeah, going there fresh and he pleading guilty and copping what he's copping. But a lot of people are going to be looking at this. We've seen guys in the last 2 years go for 6 weeks for shoulder charges. Now, whilst the shoulder charge is illegal as well under the rules, I'm thinking an elbow to an off the ball player is far, far worse than a shoulder charge to a ball runner.
Yeah.
But someone else gets to make that decision and we get to judge it.
Yeah. Well, it'll certainly have a lot of eyeballs on it as a decision is made, because it's unprecedented as well. Like, I don't think I've ever seen something like that happen, especially in the modern era with the.
Yeah. Not in the modern era. You can go back to there's been some cheapies over the years. Les Boyd on Daryl Broman is a famous one, and they're probably names that your age aren't familiar with. But if you do a Google search for Les Boyd, Daryl Broman, there was an elbow in an Origin that was just horrific. It was another elbow, and the name slips me. But there's been some king hits. Again, no place for any of that. I don't mind two blokes standing there throwing hands, but the king hits and the elbows, you can leave that out.
Yeah, well, they grab acts, really, like, just
they are 100%.
Someone they're not expecting it. Like, I think the main problem as well, you brought up the shoulder charges before. I think the main problem is that the NRL is trying too hard to phase, like, your shoulder charges, your hip drops, all that sort of stuff. They're trying way too hard to phase it out, so they're increasing the penalties for that. That's the only other reason why I see Mitch Barnett probably not getting. I'll try to be careful with my phrasing here, but not getting what he deserves in comparison to those other acts. Mainly just because of how intense the NRL has been. So, like, Tyrell Fuimaono, he got 5 or 7 weeks. I can't remember if it was 5 or 7.
I think it was 5 for the Ryan Pappenhausen shot.
Yeah. And then I think he had one in the trial matches as well, which the hip drop on.
That's right. Yep.
Hayes Dunster. And if Mitch Barnett, for the exact same act, those two acts side by side, I can see a world where Mitch Barnett also gets 5 weeks, the same as Tyrell Fuimaono. But to be honest, I see Tyrell Fuimaono's one as a 3-week, maybe. I see Mitchell Barnett's as like a 6 to 8 week. But that's just not how the judiciary works at the moment. It's sort of.
It's going to be interesting because this has been the first one that's been referred straight to under this new system. It is going to be really important. And as you said, a lot of eyeballs on it, and all clubs will be watching this one, with a great deal of interest as to how they go and how severe they go, and what type of deterrent it is. And maybe the NRL and the NRL judiciary use this as that warning shot. Maybe they make an example out of Mitchell Barnett and let you know that if you commit a foul act that is referred straight to, you're gone for a long, long time.
What's your thoughts? So these are in your realm as well. What's your thoughts on you guys, like your NRL roast, bloke in a bars and all that as a source of media? Do you think they can have more of an influence in the future than Fox and Nine and those guys?
Oh, from terms of people watching their content, I think the more the merrier, and everyone caters to a different audience, or every audience member likes a different thing. And whilst Fox and Nine have had not a monopoly, because monopoly's won, but they've had a duopoly on rugby league content for so long. But I think it's wonderful that there's a heap of us out there offering up interviews, theories, different stuff as an alternative. And I think it's reaching the point now, and I haven't listened to any of the other podcasts, but I'll back the quality of my interviews over anything that Fox or Channel 9 have produced this year or will produce. And I know what the better and more engaging interview would be. So for us footy fans, it's great. You get to pick and choose. Maybe not so great for the big two companies.
Yeah, that's something that's never really been an option until the sort of now era of podcasters being able to pick and choose what you want to see. It was you watch the footy show, or you watched the back page, or you watched whatever it was that was coming up that would talk about footy.
Yep.
And that was just it. You had those guys' opinions, and that's what you fed off.
Yes, that's exactly right. But now there's that option there. I mean, if you wanted to listen to footy, you could listen to footy 24/7 and still not get through it.
Yeah,
there's heaps out there.
too much going on.
Yeah.
With that, would you like to see sort of Fox League and Nine sort of become more open and sort of, or is this not even a possibility where they sort of loosen up how they sort of go about this, sort of open up a few new shows where you have different opinions, you maybe even get some of those guys that are running those independent things? And
yeah, they won't.
Yeah.
They won't, because they're heavily stacked with talent as it is. And they've got to cater for the masses. They've got to cater for the sponsors and the advertisers. And they've got to, keep the NRL happy. And so they've got, they're going to play it safe and be more positive than anything else. There's some wonderful debate, I would think, on Fox and Nine. There's some wonderful opinion, because some of the guys are great to listen to and great thinkers. But a lot of the time, it's business. They're catering towards the masses, and that's what they will continue to do. The podcasting share of the rugby league pie is only very small at the moment. It will continue to grow, and the good ones will thrive, and the poor ones will drop off. But that little piece of pie will become slowly bigger and bigger and bigger, because the great thing about a podcast is obviously you can listen to it whenever you want to listen to, not at the time that the station tells you that it's on. And that's the one thing with our podcast. We're up to 250 something episodes, and none of them are dated. None of them are time critical. So you can go back to episode 41, episode 162, or episode 1 and listen to it tonight, and it'll make sense. They're done and they're recorded and edited, so you can listen to any episode anytime. And that's something that, Nine and Fox can't do.
Yeah, well, that's probably the main thing, to be honest, is the accessibility for podcasters.
Yeah.
Good point you bring up. But so I was going to sort of ask a double question for you personally. What has been more enjoyable? Was it your years with Fox, doing like the sideline commentary and stuff like that, or was it doing your own podcast and sort of running things yourself? And then, do you think that media and journalism for the mainstream is something that young kids will continue to aspire to, or will it be something where young kids will start to see podcasts and social media management and stuff like that as careers that they want to go into?
I'll answer the second one first. I think the fact that you're a young bloke at school and have had the balls to reach out to certain people within the game, have created your own podcast and are creating your own brand. I think that's awesome. And that's why I agreed to do this, because you're a young bloke that's got big dreams, and you've backed yourself. And I'll help you, and any decent bloke would. So I think the social media side of it is very, very important, where you can create a brand, and hopefully that brand is able to grow. It takes a long time. There's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of guys that have been around the industry a long time that have built up a network of contacts. So, won't be easy. I still think people will aspire to go into journalism the traditional way through university, because there is a certain appeal. But I think in terms of sport journalism, I think a really good entry point might be social media and brand awareness, and going from there, and even combining the two. Can you study and also run your own podcast or social media brand, and you got the best of both worlds? Good question. The other one, what have I enjoyed more? I've enjoyed them differently. How could you not enjoy sitting on the sideline to some of the biggest games over the years? The best seat in the house, best job in the world, worked with fabulous, talented people out at the games every single week. And the most talented people aren't the ones you see on camera. They're the audio operators, the camera operators, and the camera operators in Australia and the replay operators in Australia are just the best in the world, bar none. The shots we get, the replays we give. So to work with all them and make lifelong friends like that, was a fabulous ride at Fox for so long. And, oh God, I got the brother and the sister in here now annoying me. So no, it was a fabulous ride, and a ride that's certainly not over. But I'm enjoying the podcasting and the freedom that comes with it too. So hard to answer and say one or the other, but I'll say both, but for very different reasons.
Yeah. We'll go back in time a little bit now. To your starts in the media. Obviously, your father was in the media. What was your initial interactions with media, and what sort of led you down that path?
Dad we never really spoke about it as such, about following in the footsteps. But it was probably a little bit of monkey see, monkey do. And I would see what Dad did, and it intrigued me. It interested me. I was a sport mad kid. So obviously, any type of engagement with sport was great. If you had have asked me at 12 years of age, what do you want to do when you grow up? I would have said commentate boxing and footy. Well, at that stage, there was no Foxtel, so there was no dream ever of commentating boxing and footy. There just wasn't a position available. Well, there wasn't a position. So to be able to live that dream was fabulous. But I ended up doing weekends just off my own bat for free up at Channel 7 where Dad worked, get the coffee, go to the printer, print scripts, get everyone's lunches, clean the bins, do whatever I had to do just so I could be around the journalists and learn and watch. And I did that for a number of years. I was always enthusiastic. I was always respectful. I was always polite. I always wanted to learn. I knew that I didn't know everything. And I had some absolute legends of people that guided me and helped me through and tipped me off, that, and not even necessarily tipped me off about work stuff, just about life stuff. I was very blessed to have a good core group of people that were a generation older than me that would guide me and help me through, and they believed in me, so that was lovely.
How much did your dad working in media and getting to interact with all those people that he worked with, how much did that help you in achieving your goals in getting through there?
Yeah, I got the job because of Dad. No doubt about that. I kept the job because of me. And I find that I've spoken with a lot of second generation guys in different industries and second generation footballers as well. And having the famous surname, it helps get you the spot. But when you get that spot, you've probably got to work even harder than anyone else and even better than anyone else to keep the spot, because people are looking at you ready to kick the crap out of you the first thing you do wrong. So, he opened the door. Absolutely. I made sure it didn't shut.
Yeah, 100%. Like I guess it might sound weird for you to hear, but my sort of memories of footy growing up was you on the sidelines getting those interviewing players and chiming in during the games and adding in your two piece, which was sort of nothing that anybody had ever done before. Like, I hadn't seen much of it other than yourself. What started that sideline commentary for you, and was it one of your ideas? Was it was it something that you wanted to do, or was it something that you got told to do and you just made it your own?
Ended up, I was calling games. I was doing sideline, then I was doing sideline and calling, and it just kept rotating and rotating. And it ended up just sideline. And that was, most people would see it as a demotion. I didn't. I absolutely loved it. And without sounding like a complete dickhead, I bought something different because I hadn't played 300 games or 20 tests or 30 state of origins. So I had to do it differently. And I bought something different to it and presented it in a different way. I think it's the sideline stuff. So enjoyable, but so easy. And I still scratch my head a little bit nowadays with some of the nonsense that comes out or doesn't come out. You want to know if there's an injury, what the injury is, if there's a story, what the story is, and if there's some news, what the news is. That's what you do as a sideline guy from the core. Then you can expand on that. And I just, if I am watching a game and a player goes off injured and you get to the end of the game and go to the next game and you haven't heard what happened to the player, I'm like, it's not that hard.
Yeah,
just tell me something.
Yeah. Well, that was always great because you always knew what was happening because you did get a lot of the speaking as well. Like I not that I've gone back and watched games and can remember off the top of my head, but I remember it as you talked a lot of the time because it was constantly cutting down for updates, constantly cutting down for, this person's injured, what's happened, all that sort of stuff that you mentioned. And I guess it came as a shock to me as many as most when you were let go by Fox Sports. I guess I'll ask you as much detail as you can go into. What was the reasoning for it, and what were your emotions, thoughts like at the time?
Reasoning was COVID. And that was the reason that was given. So I've got different beliefs. I'll keep them to myself. But that was the reason that was given. It doesn't mean I've got to accept it. And it was done in a shit way. But it is what it is. When someone does something for that long in any trade, I think just common decency and common courtesy and respect play a huge role in it, and they showed me none of it. And it wasn't the fact that I got made redundant. It was how it happened, and that still leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. To be honest, it was done very, very poorly.
Yep. Well, the amount that you brought to that, like,
not so mumuch the amount that I brought to it, just the fact that I've been a long-serving and loyal guy for 23 odd years.
Yeah.
And had to get treated like that at the very end of it. Yeah.
A little bit dodgy.
But that's also that's probably an insight to me. I'm an honest guy and I'm a loyal guy, and I value those two things above anything else in this world. That's probably just business in 2022 or 2021 or whenever 2020.
Yeah.
It's probably just business in the modern era, but impersonal, didn't like it. Never mind.
Yeah. Did that sort of lead off into you starting the podcast? Did that free up a lot of your time and allow you to start a podcast?
That freed up the time. So therefore, the podcasting became a reality. And look, the podcasting probably would have happened anyway, and not far away, from that timeline. We'd had artwork and ideas and everything done up by then. So this probably hurried it on just a little.
Yeah.
So, we move on.
Yep. Well, thanks for coming on, Matt. I really appreciated your time, and it was a great chat.
Pleasure, Jacob. Anytime, mate. And good luck with the podcast and good luck with the future.
Thank you.